Hello guys, this is Zombie and welcome back for part 3 of the Hannibal series by HistoryMarche. Let's go.
Early in 217 BC, the Roman Senate is still reeling from the defeat at Trebia. But, determined to strike back at Hannibal, they look to other theaters to try.
If you want to see the Battle of Trebia, don't hesitate to look at the playlist, the Hannibal playlist I did. There is this episode and also the first one about the crossing of the Alps and all that happened before.
And shift the balance of war. The Roman army that was initially sent to stop the Carthaginian general from reaching Italy is now in Iberia with new objectives, under the command of Gnaeus Scipio. After first arriving in Iberia in early autumn of 218 BC, Gnaeus Cornelius Scipio Calvus defeated and captured Hanno, along with thousands of Carthaginian troops. He also seized the rich baggage train that Hannibal left behind when he marched into the Pyrenees Mountains, while on his way to Italy. But despite this victory, Gnaeus lost many of his ship crews during Hannibal Barca's raid into the Roman enclave, which crippled his fleet. Luckily for the Romans, Hasdrubal was outnumbered 2-1, and he retreated soon after this minor victory, as he could not mount a full-scale offensive. Both generals used the winter months to regroup and plan for the coming year. The Roman
Hasdrubal, Gnaeus, Scipio. How many Scipio are there? There are so many.
General's main objective is to prevent Iberian reinforcements from reaching Hannibal by land. His second objective is to put pressure on Carthaginian holdings in Iberia by any means. From his base at Tarraco, Gnaeus spends months consolidating his position. He reaches out to various tribes to establish friendly relations through diplomacy and trade, and looks to broker alliances by offering the tribes protection against the Carthaginians. It doesn't take too long to persuade many locals to join the Roman cause, because just as most Gauls in Italy hate the Romans, so too the tribes of northern Iberia despise the Carthaginians. And although many communities are still apprehensive about
It's quite funny, but always, often the case is that the neighbors or the rulers, whatever, they are often hated more by the people closest to them than they hate the foreigners. So like there with Iberians as neighbors, and some probably are under Carthaginian control, they don't like them, but they side with the Romans that are far away. It's a very recurrent thing in history.
Confronting Carthage, especially those on the border, tribes further north of the Ebro eagerly ally themselves to Rome. Gnaeus also strengthens ties with the Greek cities, especially Massilia.
Talking about Greece versus Persia, Greece versus the Ottomans or Turkey, France and England, many such cases.
A very prosperous city that commits to sending her experienced fleet to help the Romans. And, as promised, Gnaeus detaches garrisons to defend his allies over the coming months. He also garrisons the Ebro River, anticipating an invasion by Hasdrubal Barca in the spring, and arranges the purchase of food and supplies from the locals. In addition, he distributes the plunder taken from Hannibal's baggage train to his army, which boosts his popularity with the troops. Across the Ebro, Hasdrubal Barca posts garrisons along the river to ward off Roman raids, and marches back to his winter quarters in New Carthage. Hasdrubal currently has 15,000 troops at his disposal. But the manpower reserves and the riches of Carthaginian Iberia give Hasdrubal enough muscle to quickly respond to the Roman threat. He spends the winter months resting his army, raising funds for new recruits and stockpiling provisions for the upcoming campaign. Ships are repaired and additional ships are brought in, along with new ship crews, recruited mainly from the Turdetani tribes in southern Iberia. By spring of 217 BC, Hasdrubal musters a large enough army to mount an offensive against Gnaeus. Carthaginians march out of New Carthage. Hasdrubal personally leads the ground forces, while he puts the fleet of 40 ships under the command of Himilco. The fleet sails along the coast, closely keeping pace with the army on land, under whose protection the crews can beach their ships every night to rest. While Hasdrubal initially had 15,000 troops after Hannibal departed from Iberia, it is unknown how many new troops he recruited for the campaign of 217 BC. But, considering that Gnaeus received reports from his scouts of the approaching Carthaginians, and yet didn't follow his first instinct to face them in battle, it is safe to assume that the size of Hasdrubal's army was exceedingly strong, which dissuaded the Roman general from giving battle. Furthermore, Hasdrubal could potentially tap into his vast manpower pool, while Gnaeus won't be receiving any reinforcements for at least a year. Another reason for the...
So if I had to guess, it's hard to see who will win on this theater of the war, because I didn't follow is he like Hannibal Barca or something like. I know he's related because he's Barca, Hasdrubal Barca, but yeah, and now he has more troops and he's in his territory. But on the other side, the guy is a general, he's a Roman general and has legionaries and stuff like that. So, and maybe he could have. They say he can't have reinforcement, but for now, maybe you will get some later. So, but I would say now, yeah, it looks like he has a huge advantage. But I wouldn't underestimate the Romans.
Roman general to remain cautious. Gnaeus decides to march out of Tarraco and take up a defensive position on the Ebro, with his ships following close by. Aware that the Carthaginian fleet can flank him and cut his supply lines, he handpicks his best troops from the legions and loads them into 35 ships, some of which came from Massilia with their experienced and reputable crews. With his fleet guarding his flank,
I think he can match naval power, but on land we will see.
The Roman general reaches within 15 kilometers of the Ebro. Gnaeus' plan is to concentrate his efforts on the sea. He temporarily stops and sends 2 Massilian ships to scout ahead. With his army vastly outnumbered, he recognizes that if Hasdrubal successfully surrounds or besieges his position, the superior Carthaginian fleet could cut off Roman seaborne supply lines. Therefore, his plan is to deal a knockout blow, or at least cripple the Carthaginian fleet. Massilian scouts soon return with reports that the Carthaginians are encamped at the mouth of the Ebro, their ships still beach and unmanned since the night before. Looking to seize the fortunate opportunity, Gnaeus gives his ships the signal to attack immediately, hoping to catch the enemy off guard. They make haste towards the Ebro, formed in 2 lines. The higher quality Massilian ships are in the front, their crews leading the way, while the Roman ships are formed up behind them. However, Carthaginian scouts along the coast spot the enemy fleet and sound the alarm. Hasdrubal draws up his land forces on the beach and orders Himilco to embark his crews and put to sea straight away. The Carthaginians, although caught by surprise, have confidence in their ships. Hasdrubal's troops cheer on the crews as they close.
Yes, but I'm wondering if they won't do what was done before between against the Carthaginians, is that they didn't have much troops on their ships, while the Romans packed their ships with much more troops, and it made them prevail. So I don't know if they don't precise it, but if they did, they could win. But yeah.
Distance to meet the Romans. 2 Massilian ships are intercepted. Himilco's men rush to board the enemy vessels. On the right flank.
Yeah, they have a 3 dots representation against 4. Here we don't see, but 4. So yeah, I guess they still had the advantage, the numerical advantage. So let's see. They had less ships, but more packed. So let's see how it goes.
Carthaginian ships double up on the Romans. As they board the enemy, Himilco's crews begin overwhelming the Massilians and Romans on the right. Meanwhile, chaotic fighting spreads in the center as the Romans latch onto several enemy vessels.
We will win.
Gnaeus' men are firmly on the back foot and losing ground. The Carthaginians outpaced and outmaneuvered.
Okay, yeah, as he said, yeah, because they have more ships, seeing the configuration, they could outflank, and okay, GG.
His fleet. But the battle-hardened Roman troops in the center.
I mean, image representation and the reality of the battle is very different, but from what I understand and see, it seems like that.
Hold their ground. Disciplined and organized, they slowly manage to turn the tide by sheer brute force. The legionnaires begin pushing the Carthaginians back.
So, legionary quality and number by ships.
In the chaotic fighting, they manage to sink one Carthaginian ship, together with its entire crew, then another. Some of Himilco's men begin to waver. 4 more ships in the center are crippled and left adrift with their oars shattered. Seeing the gaping hole in their line, panic among some of Himilco's crews turns into a hasty, disorganized retreat toward the shore. Hasdrubal can only watch as the Romans vigorously pursue his fleet. His troops can do little to help the retreating ships.
So it seems like the Romans won, because they have better troops.
Ironically,
and maybe, I don't know, maybe there are, better troops, more discipline, better equipment, but maybe also, I don't know, better ships.
Deployed on the beach offered a clear and safe escape route for the ships, which may have motivated some of the crews to flee rather than fight.
Yeah, we underestimate the Roman navy, but they were good. I mean, if the Roman conquered the Mediterranean Sea, it's not for nothing. Huh? And the Carthaginians were one of the great enemies they faced on sea, and we know the outcome, the final outcome. So yeah.
This would certainly explain the sudden collapse of morale amongst Himilco's men. The Carthaginian fleet finally reaches the shore. Crews beach their ships and hastily disembark, abandoning their vessels in search for safety within Hasdrubal's army. But the Romans aren't done yet. They boldly continue towards the shore, despite the risk of running their ships aground or being attacked by Hasdrubal's troops.
Yeah, be careful, guys.
To the average observer, it must have seemed like madness to come so close to the shore. But Gnaeus is willing to take the risk.
I will burn the ships.
Quickly latching onto Carthaginian vessels that are still seaworthy and begin towing them away. Seeming stunned, the Carthaginians fail to react in time. By the time they realize what has happened, the Romans sail downstream, having captured 25 of their ships.
Nah, I've never seen something like that. A battle naval like that, and it ends up with one side stealing the other's ships like that. Nah, that's... it's crazy.
At first, the defeat at the Ebro seemingly changed little. Over the coming months, Hasdrubal, with his army intact, puts pressure on the tribes to rise against Rome, stretching Gnaeus to the limit. But the Carthaginian general is also forced to deal with revolts in southern Iberia. Both sides spend over a year quelling revolts and regrouping. For the Romans, after a series of defeats suffered against Hannibal in Italy, news of Gnaeus' success is much welcomed by the Senate. Encouraged, they make plans to send reinforcements to Iberia under the command of Gnaeus' brother Publius, whose term as consul ended a few months ago. Fully recovered from his wounds, within a year Publius would arrive with 20 to 30 ships and 8,000 troops, along with...
The problem is that they won against Hasdrubal, and yeah, this guy isn't Hannibal.
Supplies.
So. And you reinforce, but it means you weaken here. So you on land, you weaken your power against a great general, a surgeon man here, with more complicated logistic and against a weaker enemy in a way on their own land. I don't know.
However, it is Gnaeus' perseverance at the Ebro that would prove to be the turning point of the war in Iberia. For the next 10 years, the Carthaginian Iberian coast would be undefended. Exposed to Roman raids, Carthage will have to divert a lot of manpower to defend its Iberian towns and countryside. And over the coming years, the Scipio brothers will pose a serious threat to the Carthaginian war effort. The defeat at Trebia struck fear into the Roman leadership. The Republic lost all control over Cisalpine Gaul. Hannibal succeeded in bringing the Gauls to his side, nearly doubling his army.
That's what I said. It's here the northern part of Italy was called the Cisalpine Gaul because they were Gaulish, in fact, at back then.
40,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry are now under his command. The march south continues. Faced with the Gallic uprising in Cisalpine Gaul, and still shocked by the loss of tens of thousands of troops at the river Trebia, the Roman Senate is determined to turn things around in 217 BC. Amidst the political turmoil, 2 new consuls are elected and sent north against Hannibal with new...
Did I dream or I heard a sound problem from them? I heard their voicing.
Other theatres of war are not ignored, evident by the victory against the Carthaginians at the Ebro and the planned reinforcements set for Iberia later in the year. But the main focus of the Roman war effort is on home soil. The plan is to use the geography of the Italian peninsula to their advantage. With the vast marshlands of the Arno River in the west, thought to be impassable during winter and spring due to flooding.
Oh, it's a very interesting map. So I knew that, you know, we can see here, but yeah, there is the Alps between France, Italy, Switzerland and stuff like that. So I knew that there was natural defenses, but I thought, once you cross the Alps, you are fine. But there is this part, I don't know, it's still considered from the Alps, but yeah, it's make a natural barrier of mountains. So okay, I wasn't aware of that.
And the rugged Apennine mountain range cutting across.
So Apennine mountains. It's in English it says the Alps, I think, same. So it's another chain.
The peninsula.
Technically.
The Romans know that there are only 2 routes into central Italy
Apennine
that Hannibal
mountains
can take, and they move to block both. Consul Gaius Flaminius positions his army at Arretium, including the 10,000 legionnaires that survived the Battle of Trebia. His co-consul, Gnaeus Servilius Geminus, is stationed at Ariminum. Both armies are bolstered with a higher number of horsemen than usual, perhaps to offset their numerical inferiority in cavalry. Hannibal, meanwhile, has problems of his own. While he did establish a base of operations in the Po Valley, Gallic support will weaken over time as his army continues to consume their resources. At the same time, the Romans decided not to pursue further battles in the north, so staying there makes little sense for Hannibal. He needs to put pressure on the Romans before his Gallic allies lose interest in the war. Just like the Senate, Hannibal knows that he can either go down the Adriatic coast and fight Servilius in the rugged terrain of Picenum, or he can fight Flaminius in the difficult Apennine mountain passes. Neither route is good. Whichever he chose, not only would the Romans be alerted about his movement ahead of time, but he would be forced into a prolonged and uncertain battle against the well...
Yeah, and either way, he only has like 2 routes, so yeah, that's hard from Hannibal perspective. We will see how he will succeed or not.
Defended Roman positions, which would allow time for the 2 consular armies to link up, something that Hannibal can ill afford. But with the arrival of warm spring weather, the Carthaginian general does the unexpected. He decides to force march his army across the Apennine Mountains and through the dangerous marshlands of the Arno River, aiming to surprise the 2 consuls and get into a good position to threaten Rome itself. The plan is arguably just as audacious as was the crossing of the Alps. The march is extremely difficult. Hannibal places his most disciplined infantry, the hard-marching Libyans and Iberians, at the head of the column. They set a fast pace, which the Gauls find difficult to maintain, as they are not used to forced marches. And by being at the back of the column, they face the added difficulty of having to march through the sticky quagmire that has been churned up by the troops in front of them. The cavalry is in the rear of the column, ushering the Gauls forward and keeping an eye on any who might decide to turn back. The terrain, however, is the army's biggest enemy. The Arno River flooded after winter rains, turning the river basin into heavily flooded, muddy wetlands. The endless, dense swampland offers almost
That's a very
no
bad
dry
place to be
areas
caught.
for resting.
He needs to get
troops
out
wade
fast.
through deep pools of water for 4 days and 3 nights, with almost no sleep and no rest, whilst carrying their heavy equipment and supplies. Those fortunate enough to be mounted are able to sleep in their saddles, while a handful of those on foot manage to climb onto the bodies of dead horses and pack animals for a brief rest. Many die to infection, disease, exhaustion, and drowning. Hannibal himself catches an eye infection, which cannot be treated because there is no time to stop the column during the forced.
I have a déjà vu impression. I don't know if it was a movie or something, but yeah, an army crossing like marshland or whatever for days. They are inside for days, walking, resting, stuff like that. And the guy got a eye infection. I saw it somewhere. So it was about Hannibal, but I can't remember. It's crazy. I have a flash of a scene, but I don't know where I saw it.
Marche, and he carries the infection for much of the journey, eventually losing sight in one eye.
It really reminds me of something. But I don't remember having watched a movie like called Hannibal or something. So I don't know.
He emerges from the swamp on the back of his sole surviving elephant, probably the brave Syrian. All the while, the Romans assumed that Hannibal is contained in the north. But what they didn't know is that the Carthaginian general managed to cross the Apennine Mountains and the Arno River wetlands with 50,000 troops in just 4 days, all without being detected, and is now in position for the next stage of his campaign. He grants his army a few days to rest and sends scouting parties south. He learns that Flaminius is at Arretium, and that the Etrurian plain can offer enough food and plunder to boost the morale of the troops. Having learned that Flaminius is an arrogant and rash commander, he plans to provoke him into giving battle by pillaging and burning the rich Etrurian countryside. Soon enough, plumes of smoke
Etrurian, it's not like Etruscan.
from burning villages and fields dot the land west of Arretium, followed by the Carthaginian column passing right next to Flaminius, brazenly taunting the Roman general. Watching from Arretium, Flaminius is fuming, knowing that it is he who is supposed to protect these lands, and yet one of the richest areas in Italy is burning on his watch. But he somehow...
It's a smart strategy. When the enemy doesn't want battle, you provoke him like that, so that he will fight you. I mean, we will see if it works, but...
Fists challenging the Carthaginian general, persuaded by his advisors to stay put and wait until...
Yes, but that's a very hard challenge, because, yeah, in a way you are like, yes, I need to wait for the other and we will crush him, but on the other side, yeah, it's destroying your region, and also it's the economy, etc., and it also fills the army, so hard challenge.
Vilius joins him. Unable to force an open battle, for Hannibal...
And you give a bad image of your army and yourself.
On Arretium is out of the question. He cannot risk losing too many of his experienced soldiers that he cannot replace. His army also has limited supplies and has to keep moving. Furthermore, Hannibal has no way of knowing how far the other Roman army is, and as far as he knows, Servilius could be arriving any day now. So the Carthaginian general decides to press on. Leaving not one, but two armies in his rear must have seemed mad. But actually, by bypassing Arretium, Hannibal maintains the initiative and keeps the Romans guessing. He wants to be the one who dictates the course of the campaign. But scouts soon bring good news. Flaminius decided not to wait for Servilius after all. Knowing that the battle is soon coming, Hannibal makes sure to let his Gallic troops know that they will be fighting against Flaminius, the man who caused them much misery in years past. Flaminius is renowned for his victories against Gallic tribes. He is responsible for introducing a law that allowed Romans to settle near and on Gallic lands.
Okay.
This created conflict, which Flaminius resolved by invading and occupying more Gallic lands.
Not sure it's a way to resolve, but okay.
To settle more Romans on the lands he conquered. Needless to say, he is hated by the Gauls, and the 17,000 of them in Hannibal's army can't wait to get their hands on him. Meanwhile, for the Roman army that prides itself on its military prowess, it must be humiliating to pass through villages and countryside. But Flaminius can still redeem himself, and he is only 1 day's march away. It's early morning of June 24th, 217 BC. Flaminius marches out of his camp towards the smoke rising in the distance, apparently from Carthaginian campfires, eager to get...
I have a vibe that's a trap.
...to grips with the enemy. In the front, he places veteran legionnaires that survived the Battle of Trebia, who are also very keen on meeting the enemy in battle. As the column moves, a low-hanging mist envelops the lake and the valley.
Please, tell me you do that.
The shoreline is eerily quiet.
You fall on them.
The locals seem to have vanished. Unable to see too far ahead, the Romans literally stumble into Hannibal's heavy infantry, who are blocking the road. Fighting spontaneously erupts at the far end of the valley.
Nice, so they think they are pushing them.
Despite being surprised by the enemy, the Roman vanguard forms up in battle formation. Further back, it is some time before the Roman center and rear realize what is happening in the front. The visibility is hampered by the low-hanging morning mist. But in the hills above the mist, Hannibal's
Yes,
hidden
I was
troops
sure.
can clearly see the Roman column. Although they do not know it yet, the Romans walked straight into an ambush.
Well played.
But
But
let's take-
I'm wondering if mist was like calculated, lucky, or normal. Maybe, I mean, it's like a big day, so maybe it's normal weather and Hannibal use it. I don't know. But if it is that, it's a genius. Like, you see, you are around the lake, there is always mist morning, and you use that to do this flanking maneuver. It's very nice. It would remind me of, I mean, I don't know if I put on plan list, but in terms of results of Austerlitz, with the mist that had his troop.
A moment to consider how difficult it was to set up the ambush at Lake Trasimene. Hannibal couldn't just send his troops up the hill to their positions. That would have left tracks all over the hillside. And with Flaminius hot on his heels, he didn't have much time either. Yet
So how he
Hannibal
did?
marched to the eastern end of the valley and somehow managed to coordinate tens of thousands of troops around the hills to the north into their correct positions. At night, all within a brief window of time, and without arousing any suspicion.
So that's even crazier than I thought. So they were alright when they said that he had a crazy control over his troops. And it wasn't easy back then because people, soldiers, they were less professional. Also, he had many, he didn't have only Carthaginians, but also Gallic tribes, Numidians and Lydians and others, so Iberians, etc. So to coordinate this multi-ethnic army, that's very good.
This is without doubt quite an astonishing military feat. Now, Hannibal signals his hidden forces to attack. It's unclear if trumpets signaled the start of the attack, or if his captains were ordered to wait until the Romans are deep enough in the valley. Whatever the case, the ambush succeeds completely. The use of campfires in the distance tricked the Romans into moving deep into the valley, thinking that the Carthaginians are further ahead. And by masterfully hiding tens of thousands of his
they are
troops in the
cooked.
hills,
They are
Hannibal
cooked.
completely surrounded the enemy. Coming
Yes.
seemingly out of nowhere,
Flaminius.
Numidian cavalry
Rape.
and Gallic heavy infantry engaged the Roman rear, closing off their line of retreat. Hannibal's light infantry, skirmishers and Gallic heavy infantry clash with the Roman center. Having previously marched in a very loose formation, Flaminius's army is caught completely by surprise.
Rape.
They soon find themselves in a fight for their life. Their formations break up, and many soldiers are left to fend for themselves. The fighting is so fierce that none of the combatants notice a strong, nearby earthquake. After less than an hour of fighting, Hannibal's troops split apart the disorganized enemy column. From this point on, the battle becomes a slaughter. Numidians and Gauls overwhelm the Roman rear, forcing them all the way to the lakeshore. Many try to swim in their heavy armor, desperate to get away. According to Polybius, many Romans drown in the lake, while others who manage to stay afloat beg for mercy, but are killed then and there. The Roman center fights a brave last stand, but after another 2 hours of fighting, most of Flaminius's men are cut down,
humiliating.
while others drown in the lake as they try to swim away. According to legend, the Roman consul is recognized amidst the fighting, and the enraged Gauls fight to get to him. The consul's best troops rally to protect him, but one of the Gallic warriors fights his way through and thrusts his spear into the consul, killing him.
Damn.
Meanwhile, the Roman vanguard still stands firm. Once they realize that the battle is lost, they start fighting their way through Hannibal's heavy infantry, desperate to escape the field. But they too would be captured within a day or two after.
Still impossible not to break your battle formation despite this complete slaughter. Yeah, and they were able initially, from what I get, to get away. So yeah, it shows the Roman discipline. It's just that their leader wasn't on the same level as Hannibal. Yeah, but other than that, yeah, the Romans were high quality soldiers.
To the battle. In less than 3 hours of fighting, a whole Roman army is virtually wiped out. It is said that Flaminius' body was torn to pieces by Gallic
30,000
soldiers.
casualties. Crazy.
So much so that Hannibal was not able to find any trace of the consul after the battle.
You know, during the Middle Ages, there weren't most battles were very small, and so yeah, like 40,000 casualties is so huge. And even in ancient times, also it was huge.
To give him a proper burial. Carthaginian losses, meanwhile, are minor. Large plunder is taken, especially military equipment. Hannibal re-equips his Libyan infantry. Each man is given a Roman mail, bronze helmet, and an oval scutum shield.
What is a Roman mail? What is a mail? I know emails, but mail.
And an oval scutum shield. Within a few days, the Romans suffer another disastrous loss. As Servilius was on the move to join Flaminius, he hurriedly sent all of his 4,000 cavalry ahead of the army to help his co-consul. Hannibal learned of their movement even before Servilius knew about Flaminius' defeat. Maharbal, Hannibal's second in command, rode out to meet them, launching a surprise attack. Those who survived were captured. By eliminating Servilius' cavalry, Hannibal effectively neutralized his entire consular army. Few, if
So, the Romans were good, had a good navy, good on land, the army, the legionaries, but yeah, their cavalry didn't look good. I mean, from what I get now, but I don't know.
Many commanders have been able to match Hannibal's ambush at Lake Trasimene, where one entire army ambushed and effectively destroyed another entire army.
Yeah, they are cooked, the Romans.
The population in Rome fell into utter despair, as Lake Trasimene is not far, and it seems like there is nothing that can stop Hannibal from attacking the city, as Servilius has to withdraw back to Ariminum to counter the Gauls who, encouraged by Hannibal's presence, aggressively began raiding Roman territory. In this time of crisis, the Senate appoints a dictator, a certain Fabius Maximus, to coordinate the defense against Hannibal.
As far as I know, dictator back then, it means that the Republic, it gives like full powers, or at least full executive power to a man, but for a determined period of time, like 6 months. So it's the ancient definition of a dictator.
While Hannibal makes preparations to press on.
And that's why we call certain people that have a lot of power dictators, and others that have a lot of power, we don't call them dictators. It's because dictators are in a republic, in a monarchy, for example. If a king has a lot of power, you don't call him dictator because it's a king.
Further into Italy.
I think that's the end. Yeah, so I watch around 2 episodes for each part that I do. So if you are still there, it means that you likely appreciated the video. So don't hesitate to put a like, also to subscribe. It would support the channel, and you can follow the next episode of Hannibal series and also of my other series. I do a big chunk of what I'm doing right now is the Napoleon series by Epic History TV. So you can watch it too, and I will do others in the future. So tell you, see you next time.